For a disease to break out, it's usually a symptom of ecological disturbance. So for the outbreak of a disease, you need three things. You need a susceptible host, a vector, and then of course the disease. We call this the epidemiological triangle. For the disease to break out, one of the links is broken. Let's take rabies for instance. You get the vector, which is your black-backed jackal, the disease being rabies, and then of course the susceptible host. Let's take for instance a kudu. With rabies, it mainly targets your dog species. What happens is farmers put out poisoned bait for the jackals to control their numbers. And this attracts other predators, even raptors. The raptors eat of that poisoned meat, and then the jackals will eat that raptor that died. In that way, it gets rabies. It just takes one bite to infect the host, which is a huge financial loss for the farmer. To control this type of diseases, there's a couple of things you can do. First of all, you can do quarantine, which is mainly done in South Africa. You can put out wildlife fences, which is a bit tricky, but if done correctly, it can prevent things like rabies. Do some research. If you have, for instance, wildebeest, you can cut off their migration pattern. So do your research, check how much territory and home ranges there is. By cutting off their migration pattern, you can actually cause large-scale deaths, which has their own diseases. Another thing to do is by burning carcasses. When that is done, it's usually only with airborne diseases like anthrax. Then you have what is actually done most successfully here in South Africa is the shooting of the animals. But there you have to know which animals is infected to stop the disease immediately instead of it spreading. And then the last thing, which I'm not a big fan of, is poison. Putting out poison bait is an old way of dealing with things, but it's also a stupid way, because in that way you're actually throwing the whole ecosystem around. Instead of targeting one animal, you can target a lot. For instance, your vultures. If they come and eat it, they die. It's an endangered species. You don't get to clean your carcasses anymore and more diseases spread. So with disease management, think before you do.